Part 1. The invisible chains you choose to wear. It always begins the same way. You start to feel the call, not from the outside world, but from something ancient and buried deep within you. A whisper in your soul that says, "There's more." You begin to wake up from the illusion, the patterns, the noise. You start meditating, reading sacred texts, questioning your thoughts, maybe even distancing yourself from toxic environments. But then something strange happens. Just when you think you're getting closer to truth, life hits harder. You feel more lost, more confused, even more attacked than before. And you wonder, what am I doing wrong? That's where the hidden danger lies. Because the thing delaying your awakening, the thing attracting low vibrational energies and even demonic interference, isn't always obvious. It's not your lack of knowledge. It's not the people around you. It's not even your wounds. It's something most of us do unconsciously, habitually, and even proudly. It's this: you keep identifying with the story you're supposed to outgrow. You keep wearing an identity that was programmed into you, one that no longer fits your soul. We've been trained since childhood to form identities around our traumas, our family roles, our cultural conditioning. I'm the fixer. I'm the black sheep. I'm the one who always gets hurt. These labels become anchors, keeping us tied to the past. And here's where it gets spiritual. Every false identity creates a vibrational distortion. It tells the universe, this is who I am, even if it's a lie. And demons, yes, actual demonic forces don't need to possess you when they can simply agree with the story you've already chosen to tell about yourself.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Do you understand what that means? When you say, "I'm not good enough," or "I'll never be free," that's not just a thought. That's a spiritual contract. And the unseen realm operates on agreement. Every time you repeat that narrative, you're signing a permission slip for interference. Because demons don't need to force their way in, they respond to resonance. If your story vibrates with fear, shame, victimhood, or hatred, they will be drawn to you like moths to flame. Not because you're evil, but because you're unaware. This is the hard truth we must face. Your awakening doesn't just require light. It requires death. Death of every version of you that was forged in fear. Death of every belief that came from survival rather than truth. And most people don't realize they're delaying this death. They romanticize the struggle. They turn their pain into personality. They confuse awareness with identity. But you are not your wounds. You are not your story. You are not the narrative your ego crafted to feel safe in a world built on illusions. Let me ask you something deeply personal. Who would you be if you couldn't use your pain as a reference point? Who would you be without your trauma? Without the need to prove anything to anyone? Without the need to be seen as the victim, the survivor, the warrior, or the healer? Would you still feel real? Or would you feel invisible, like you no longer had a role to play? That's the terrifying part of awakening. It strips you bare. And in that bareness, demons see an opening, because identity crisis creates spiritual vulnerability. We've been taught to fear demons as monstrous beings who show up in the night. But the real ones, the ones that delay your awakening, wear much subtler faces. They show up as addictions to your past. as the voice that tells you to be small so others won't feel uncomfortable, as the impulse to dim your light so you don't outshine your old self. They feed on your allegiance to limitation. And the more loyal you are to false versions of you, the more access they have. You might be thinking, but what's wrong with honoring my past? What's wrong with acknowledging where I've come from? Nothing. Until it becomes a shrine. Until you start worshiping your wounds. Until you begin to believe that your pain is what makes you powerful. That's not healing. That's spiritual ego in disguise. True healing means you carry the wisdom, not the weight. You walk forward, not in denial of your past, but no longer defined by it. And that shift from carrying to releasing is where the real war begins. Because the moment you try to let go of the false you, everything begins to resist. Old thoughts return. Old habits sneak in. Old people reappear. This isn't coincidence. It's spiritual backlash. The ego hates uncertainty, and demons hate evolution. So when you start dissolving your false self, you threaten every energetic structure that was built to keep you asleep. This is why the attacks feel personal, because they are. You're not just changing your thoughts. You're reprogramming frequencies. You're shaking realms. And here's a deeper layer: most of us delay our awakening by trying to awaken the wrong way. We chase enlightenment like a checklist. We trade one identity for another. From I'm broken to I'm awakened. But both are still identities. Both are still illusions. The real awakening is not becoming something new, it's shedding everything you're not. But shedding feels like dying. And until you're willing to die to who you've been, you will keep attracting energies that reinforce who you're trying to outgrow. So stop doing this. Stop outsourcing your awakening to gurus, books, rituals, or titles. Stop clinging to spiritual performance. Stop using your journey as a shield to avoid the real work, which is letting go. Letting go of needing to be right. Letting go of needing to be seen. Letting go of needing to be someone. The divine does not require your performance. It requires your presence. And demons thrive not in darkness, but in absence, especially the absence of your authentic self. Let's talk about another trap comparison. You delay your awakening every time you compare your path to someone else's. Every time you think you're behind. Every time you mimic someone else's practice because it worked for them. But your soul has a unique fingerprint or a unique rhythm. And when you abandon your own rhythm to match another's, you fracture your energy. That fracture becomes an entry point. And again, the demonic doesn't need to attack, it only needs to amplify your disconnection. The same goes for spiritual bypassing. The need to be positive all the time. To never feel anger, sadness, or grief. That need is not spiritual, it's fear. And fear is fertile ground for deception. When you suppress your shadow, you give it power. When you deny your darkness, you make it louder. And that denial creates a split. And where there is a split, there is space for interference. Awakening isn't about being light. It's about being whole. And wholeness includes both the sacred and the shadow. You delay your awakening every time you seek validation from the very world you were sent to transcend. Every time you need others to agree with your truth before you trust it. Every time you water down your soul to stay accepted. That's not safety. That's spiritual self-abandonment. And every act of self-abandonment is a magnet for spiritual interference. Why? Because demons don't attack power, they attack disconnection. When you are disconnected from your essence, you are programmable. When you are connected, you are untouchable. So what's the solution? Radical honesty. You must become brutally honest with yourself about what you're still clinging to. What are you afraid to release? What identity still gives you a false sense of control? What narrative still makes you feel needed, important, safe? And are you willing to sacrifice comfort for truth? Because awakening will cost you everything you thought you were. But in return, it will give you everything you truly are. And here's the final truth: demons are not just external entities. Some of them live inside you, in your habits, in your projections, in your compulsions, in the parts of you that still believe the lie. That's why awakening is so terrifying, because it requires you to face not just the world, but yourself. And when you face yourself fully, without filters, without masks, that's when the shadows begin to flee. Not because you fought them, but because you stopped feeding them. You are not here to perform your awakening. You are here to embody it. And embodiment means integrating truth so deeply that it becomes your default vibration. Not something you try to do, but something you are. And when you reach that level of presence, demons have no foothold. Not because they cease to exist, but because you've ceased to resonate with their frequency. Are you ready to stop doing what delays your awakening? Are you ready to confront the lies you've built your identity around? Are you ready to face the truth that the most dangerous thing you've ever done is believe you were anything less than divine? Part 2. The energetic contracts you didn't know you signed. There comes a moment on the spiritual path when we stop looking outside for the enemy and begin realizing how often we've co-signed our own suffering. It's a moment of radical responsibility, one that feels like both liberation and heartbreak. Because you begin to see how many of your struggles were not punishments, but consequences of agreements you made unconsciously. Agreements with beliefs, with energies, with identities. And here's the uncomfortable truth: what you agree with energetically, you empower spiritually. We don't often realize the spiritual weight of our daily decisions. Every time you choose fear over intuition, you reinforce a contract with the old paradigm. Every time you betray your truth for temporary comfort, you re-sign a lease with limitation. And every time you lower your frequency just to be accepted, you open the door to entities that feed on spiritual compromise. Demons don't need to break in, they wait by the door of your hesitation. They wait at the threshold of your indecision. And when you waver in your truth, they enter through the crack. You delay your awakening when you stay loyal to people, places, and patterns that your soul has outgrown. Loyalty is sacred, but misplaced loyalty is spiritual poison. Many of us are loyal to dysfunction because it's familiar. We stay in friendships that drain us because we mistake history for alignment. We stay in environments that dull us because we fear the unknown. But remember this: every time you choose familiarity over growth, you're making a spiritual statement: I am not ready to evolve. And that declaration echoes through the unseen. The demonic realm respects alignment. It respects clarity. It respects authority. But it exploits confusion. It thrives in the gray areas, the maybe, the someday, the I'm not sure. Spiritual awakening requires you to become precise, not rigid but rooted. You must know who you are, what you serve, and what you will no longer tolerate. Because anything left undefined becomes an invitation. And demons are opportunists. They don't need your permission, they just need your uncertainty. Let's talk about the energy of not enough. The belief that you're not enough is one of the most powerful attractors of demonic interference. Why? Because it creates a vacuum, an energetic emptiness that screams to be filled. And what fills it? Validation seeking, overgiving, people-pleasing, addiction, approval chasing. These behaviors become portals for entities that feed on your disempowerment. Every time you act from a place of unworthiness, you are vibrating on a frequency that invites spiritual distortion. One of the most dangerous things we do is confuse emotional intensity with spiritual connection. Just because something feels powerful doesn't mean it's aligned. Not every spirit that makes your skin tingle is divine. Not every dream with symbolism is prophetic. Not every sign is a message from the light. Demons can disguise themselves as guides. They can speak in the language of light. They can mirror your desires to keep you addicted to seeking instead of becoming. This is why discernment is not optional, it is survival. You delay your awakening every time you outsource your intuition. When you rely on others to validate your inner knowing, you weaken your own spiritual authority. The divine speaks to you directly, through your body, through your dreams, through your inner stillness. But if you don't trust that voice, you will follow every loud opinion, every trending teaching, every charismatic leader, even if it leads you away from yourself. And the further you drift from your center, the more fragmented your energy becomes. Fragmentation is fertile ground for spiritual attack. Have you ever noticed how your energy feels different after certain conversations, certain environments, certain thoughts? That's not imagination. That's spiritual sensitivity. Your field is always speaking. And when you ignore the signals, the tightness in your chest, the sudden fatigue, the inner know you deny your own protection. Demons don't need to overpower you if you keep silencing your own guidance. That's why awakening isn't about learning more, it's about listening more. Listening to the whispers, the nudges, the subtle shifts. That's where truth lives. Another way we delay our awakening is by trying to awaken others who haven't chosen it. This is one of the most draining traps for the chosen ones. You see the potential, you see the light, you want to help. But if they haven't chosen to awaken, your energy becomes a sacrifice. You become a battery for someone else's resistance. And guess what? Demons love that. They love when you pour into people who are not ready, because it drains you and delays your mission. Not everyone is your assignment. Some people are your distraction. You must learn to protect your energy like it's sacred currency, because it is. Every decision you make either invests in your awakening or delays it. There is no neutral ground, and the more intentional you become, the more clarity you gain. Clarity is a weapon. It cuts through illusions. It repels deception. It realigns your field. And most importantly, it tells the spiritual world, both light and dark, exactly where you stand. Let's talk about distraction. It's one of the most underestimated forms of spiritual warfare. In today's world, Distraction is engineered. It's monetized. It's weaponized. You scroll for hours and wonder why your energy feels scattered. You binge on information and wonder why you're not integrating wisdom. You consume other people's voices and wonder why your own feels so quiet. Distraction isn't harmless. It's a strategy. Because a distracted soul is a dormant soul, and dormancy attracts darkness. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: not everyone who appears spiritual is operating from light. There are entire communities, movements, even teachers who unknowingly serve the very forces they claim to fight. How? By reinforcing hierarchy, by glorifying suffering, by feeding ego in the name of truth. Demons don't need to oppose spirituality, they just need to infiltrate it. That's why you must always ask, does this teaching empower me to connect with myself? Or does it make me dependent on someone else? You delay your awakening when you confuse comfort with alignment. Just because something feels safe doesn't mean it's right. Growth is uncomfortable. Truth is disruptive. Awakening is often terrifying. But we've been conditioned to seek ease over evolution. And that conditioning keeps us soft, not spiritually, but energetically. Demons don't fear your comfort. They fear your courage. Every time you choose discomfort in service of truth, you reclaim a piece of your power. Let's go deeper. Spiritual stagnation is not just an emotional state. It's an energetic agreement. When you stop growing, when you stop stretching, when you stop questioning, you enter into energetic paralysis. You become easy to influence, easy to manipulate, easy to seduce back into old identities. That's why demons don't attack the ignorant, they attack the inactive. Because inactive light poses no threat. Movement is power. Progress is protection. Evolution is exorcism. Here's something that will shift your entire paradigm. Demons are not obsessed with destroying you. They're obsessed with delaying you. Because time is vibrational, and the longer you take to awaken, the longer they get to feed. Every cycle you repeat becomes a buffet. Every lie you believe becomes fuel. And every day you stay in confusion is a day your light sits idle. This is a war of attrition. They win by wearing you down, by making you think you have forever. But you don't have forever. You have now. You have this moment, this inhale, this decision, this choice to either delay or deepen, to either resist or remember, to either shrink or rise. And the moment you choose awakening over avoidance, something shifts in the unseen. You become less programmable, less penetrable, less vulnerable. Not because you're flawless, but because you're present. So let me ask you, what energetic agreements are you still unconsciously honoring? What distractions are you still calling rest? What identities are you still afraid to release? And are you willing to burn it all down, not for destruction, but for divine reconstruction? Because until you do, you will keep circling the same mountain. You will keep attracting the same energies. You will keep wondering why the light feels so far. But the light has never been far. It's been waiting for you, not at the top of the mountain, but at the moment you stop climbing in circles and start walking in truth. Part 3. The sacred choice that changes everything. There comes a point in your spiritual journey when you must understand a single, life-altering truth. Awakening is not something that happens to you, it's something you choose over and over again. It's not a one-time event. It's not a peak moment of clarity that lasts forever. It's a series of small, sacred decisions made in the shadows. Decisions to listen when the world is screaming, to stand when your ego is begging you to run, to stay true when everything around you demands compromise. And the moment you begin choosing awakening with consistency, everything around you begins to shift, sometimes violently. The violent part is where most people turn back. Because as you start to embody truth, the illusions around you start to collapse. People fall away. Systems reject you. Comfort evaporates. And the part of you that's still attached to safety tries to convince you to stop. That's where the real spiritual war begins, not outside of you, but within. Because awakening is not just about light. It is the confrontation of every false god you've bowed to, every lie you've believed, every shadow you've avoided. And when those shadows fight to stay alive, they often scream through the mouth of your own fear. You delay your awakening when you keep waiting for the right time, the right teacher, the right mood, the right energy. But the right time is always now. Because demons don't wait. They don't take breaks. They don't pause because you're tired. They feed on your hesitation. They grow in the space between your knowing and your action. Every time you say, "I'll do it tomorrow," you give them another day of access. You give them another day of dominance. And they don't even have to fight you anymore, they just have to keep you waiting. Let me speak honestly, many of us confuse being spiritual with being passive. We think surrender means silence, that love means tolerance, that peace means avoidance. But we forget that even the most enlightened beings, Yeshua, Buddha, the great mystics, were warriors of truth. They disrupted systems. They confronted darkness. They cast out spirits. They didn't just meditate in caves, they walked into temples and flipped tables. Why? Because awakening isn't just about inner peace. It's about inner authority. And inner authority terrifies the demonic. You delay your awakening when you refuse to reclaim your authority. And I don't mean worldly power, I mean spiritual authorship. The power to say, "This is who I am," regardless of who you want me to be. The power to say, "I don't need your permission to be free." The power to say, "This is my space, my energy, my frequency, and no darkness enters without consequence." That level of clarity sends shock waves through the unseen. Because once you remember who you are, you stop being food. You stop being a victim. You stop being available to anything that vibrates beneath your truth. Let's talk about your space, your home, your phone, your conversations, your energy field. Every space you occupy is either a sanctuary or a feeding ground. Demons are not just attracted to people, they're attracted to atmospheres. If you're constantly consuming chaos, entertainment laced with fear, gossip, or unconscious energy, you're not just delaying your awakening, you're inviting interference. Your environment is an altar. What you place on it becomes your offering. Is your life an offering of clarity or confusion? Of truth or trends? Of depth or distraction? You delay your awakening every time you ignore your body's wisdom. Your body is not separate from your spirit. It is the instrument that channels your frequency into form. And when you eat what numbs you, move in ways that deplete you, Ignore what your gut is screaming you, dull your signal. The demons love dull signals, because the more you disconnect from the body, the more you float in mental concepts and spiritual fantasies. But the real work is embodied. It lives in your breath, your posture, your stillness, your presence. And when you are truly present in your body, you become a pillar of light, immovable. You delay your awakening when you chase symptoms instead of root causes. You want peace, so you light incense. You want clarity, so you pull cards. You want healing, so you read another book. But all of it is noise if you're unwilling to face what's underneath. The grief, the rage, the shame, the silence. That's where the real awakening lies. And demons don't fear rituals. They fear integration. They fear when you stop performing spirituality and start living it. Here's something few will tell you: awakening will sometimes make you feel worse before it makes you feel better. Why? Because it shines light on everything you've been unwilling to see. The trauma, the patterns, the buried emotions, the false identities. And when those things surface, it's tempting to numb again, to go back to sleep, to call it too much. But that's the test. That's the initiation. Can you sit with the rawness of your own becoming without numbing it? Without labeling it? Without running from it? Because if you can, you begin to alchemize. You begin to transmute pain into wisdom, shadow into strength, suffering into sovereignty. And in that alchemy, you emit a frequency demons cannot tolerate. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And realness is rare. Realness is radiant. Realness is revolutionary. Demons don't fear your strength, they fear your authenticity. Because an authentic soul is a clear channel, and a clear channel cannot be controlled. You delay your awakening when you keep seeking external permission to evolve. You wait for people to approve your truth before you speak it, or your family to understand before you change, for your friends to support you before you shift. But the path of awakening is often lonely at first, because you are walking out of the collective illusion, and people will mock what they don't understand. They will resist what reflects their own unhealed shadows. But your job is not to be understood. Your job is to be free. You delay your awakening when you make fear your counselor. Fear is not your enemy, it's your signal. But it was never meant to be your guide. Fear will always point you towards safety, not truth. And truth will often feel unsafe at first because it threatens your illusions. So the question becomes, are you willing to follow truth even when it scares you? Are you willing to walk into the fire of your own transformation knowing there is no way back to who you were? Because once you taste truth, the old life becomes unbearable. The old patterns feel suffocating. The old relationships feel hollow. And if you try to stay where your soul no longer fits, you begin to decay not physically, but energetically. That's what spiritual stagnation feels like slow death in the disguise of comfort, like soul silence dressed as peace, like numbness pretending to be neutrality. But your soul didn't come here to be neutral. It came here to ignite. So I ask you now, what are you still doing that delays your awakening? What patterns are you protecting? What lies are you still loyal to? What fear still governs your decisions? What version of yourself are you still keeping alive because it's easier than becoming who you really are. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be luminous. You are not here to fit in. You are here to fracture illusions. You are not here to be safe. You are here to be sacred. And the moment you stop doing what delays your awakening, the moment you return to your center, everything changes. The veil lifts. The path clears. The demons flee. Not because they were defeated in battle, but because you stopped resonating with their frequency. Because you remembered. And remembrance is the most dangerous thing a soul can do in a world built to make you forget. Remember who you are. Remember whose you are. Remember what you came here to be.